Hello. This week, Northwood would like to promote another one of our tenants, Hernley Family Karate. They've been in our building for several years now, and we are glad to have them. They offer classes for children 5 years or older, including adults. They offer classes indoors and outdoors and are accommodating safety concerns in this time of pandemic. And so there are multiple outdoor classes offered for those who are concerned about catching the coronavirus, but also whilst indoors, they're taking proper safety precautions as it relates to the virus, social distancing, etc. Hernley Family Karate is led by the Hernley family. And here they are, pictured for you to see, Vince and Beth, along with their 2 children. If you're interested in learning more, go to afterschoolhq.com/Hernley Family Karate, where you can find class schedules and can sign up and even pay for classes. As you can see, they offer classes at a variety of times and focus on a variety of competencies such as agility, confidence, self-control, leadership, and even memory. Also, I think that it reflects very well on them that they accommodate various special needs as well. Before we move on to the message, I'd like to refer you to our website, www.indncc.org, where you can read more about Northwood Christian Church, our goals, our mission, but also learn about the other groups that gather in our building and use our building on a weekly basis. We are at once a church and a community center. Our imprint in the community is very noticeable, and we would like to keep it that way. So if you are interested in being a financial supporter of Northwood Christian Church and support our Center for Faith and Community at Northwood, as we call it, please click the Givelify link in the comments below, or if you're watching this on Facebook, in the description of the video above, and you can contribute, and your contribution will keep our building operating so that we can continue to be available for others as they go about their life-giving work in our community. It also support our food pantry and all the church activities, and also help us to continue to be good hosts for our tenants. And so if you're interested, please click the Givelify link. Or if you'd like to learn more, please visit our website, which again, I will remind you is www.indncc.org. And now, on with the message. Today's scripture reading can be found in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 20, verses 1 through 16, and it goes, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' So they went. When he went out again about noon and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock, he went out and found others standing around. And he said to them, 'Why are you standing here idle all day?' They said to him, 'Because no one has hired us.' He said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard.' When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, 'Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first.' When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, 'These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat.' But he replied to one of them, 'Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last.'" I don't know how many times that phrase arises in the Gospels. Jesus saying that the last will be first and the first will be last. This is a reversal of our value system, of what we think sensible and right and fair. But remember, it's about God's love. How much love is it fair to give, and what do we deserve as it relates to love? The best way to envision what is happening here is to draw a comparison between this story and the situation many American workers found themselves in during the Great Depression. Millions of people were out of work, and they would go to different places where there might be a day's worth of labor, and they would stand in long lines just to get one day's pay to provide for one day's meal, perhaps, for them and their family. So you'd make your way down to the docks or to some city corner where you knew that some employer would be selecting the best and the brightest and the strongest and those that got there first to put in the hardest work so that that employer could get as much labor as possible during hard times. This is transactional life where each is trying to get as much as they can from the other, and the employer certainly has the upper hand, and the employee just wants to get enough to put some food on the table. And here we have a similar situation. Poor day laborers standing around waiting to be chosen. Just imagine you get out of bed at the crack of dawn. The cold morning air causes you to hold your arms close to your chest while you shift your weight from foot to foot as you stand there waiting for the sun to rise, and the employer shows up perhaps with a clipboard in hand. Imagine you're standing next to other people and you're hoping beyond hope that maybe today you will be chosen. You have a sick feeling in your stomach because yesterday you were not chosen and you went home to your family holding an empty sack. And perhaps you have children who are hungry and depending on you, and a wife who is trying to see the best in a bad situation, or a husband trying to see the best in a bad situation. You want to work, and you aren't standing there simply because you are a lazy person. You're not there because of your lack of willingness to work, but because no one will choose you. Perhaps you were passed by because you were not like some of the others. Perhaps you weren't as strong. Or perhaps you have some disease that prevents you from being as productive as most. Or maybe just last week at the same work location, you threw out your back and the employer knows it. Maybe there's age that is keeping you from being as productive as some of the others. Maybe you're aging out of the workforce in this circumstance. Either way, you are passed by and you begin to wonder where your next meal will come from. But then, to your utter joy and confusion, 3 hours later at around 9 o'clock, the owner comes back looking for more workers. And this is not typical. This is unusual. Usually he just picks the employees at the beginning of the day and you just basically hope against hope that something like this will happen. And now it is happening. And this time he stops in front of you and asks if you'd like to make a buck or two. And your excitement makes it difficult to stammer out a yes. And so you go and join the other workers. True, they've been working longer. They have seniority, but at least you're here. At least you're chosen. At least somebody has decided that you deserve a chance. 3 hours later, and around noon, the owner returns with a new batch of workers. And this is even stranger. And you wonder why the owner didn't just hire all the workers outright. Either way, beggars literally can't be choosers. So you continue in your labor. And then 3 o'clock rolls around, the owner comes back with still more workers. And your job is getting easier as you are having more help. But this seems to be getting a bit much. And yet again, don't ask questions so long as you're paid. The bread has to be bought. The text reads that the owner goes back to the marketplace one more time around 5 o'clock. It's near closing time. It's about time to call it a day. Yet he goes and asks the one standing around, "Why are you still standing here idle?" And the response should break your heart, because no one has hired us. No one has chosen us. These are the dregs. These are the probably crippled, diseased, weak, not the ones that you would choose. And remember, several other people at different tiers have been chosen before them. No one has chosen us. We have not been selected. We've been passed by again and again, probably day after day. No one has determined that I am worth their while, maybe one of them says. No one has determined that I might be an asset to them. But the owner of this vineyard says, even an hour or two before quitting time, you also go into the vineyard. I accept you. I accept you. So they go, and you are perplexed to see more workers added to the throng. And you think to yourself, I've been working since 9, so I hope to receive at least enough to buy some bread for my wife and kids. But I can't imagine what these latecomers hope to gain. A few pennies, a few nickels, a few dimes. They haven't worked enough to even buy a cracker. Then comes the time to receive payment. And the first group goes forward and receives a fair full day's pay. Then your group comes up, and maybe you expect a little less. You haven't been there as long as the first group. Fair is fair. But to your surprise, you're paid exactly as much as the first group. And the first group grumbles a bit, but you reason that while the first group worked longer, you worked harder. At least so it seems to you. You deserve this. Isn't so much of life trying to figure out what it is we deserve, what others deserve? We are judged and we judge. But then the next group comes up, the group that began at midday, and goes forward and receives their pay. And to your mild, maybe more than mild annoyance, you see that they receive the same as you. And you turn to another person in your group and you say, no, that doesn't seem right. What gives? And then the next group, the group that has been working half as long as you, goes forward, and they receive as much as you. The denarii in your pocket seems to be depreciating with each passing minute. Then the last group comes forward, the castaways. They showed up late to the place where you were working and slaving all day, and even when they got there, you see why they were passed over. They can hardly lift 10 pounds. What good did they do? What did they bring? What did they contribute? So you're looking hard. What do they deserve? The cripples, the diseased, the elderly, the weak, and the broken. And you watch them come forward. And you see to your disgust that they receive the same as you. You say, is that all I'm worth? Now remember, you received a full day's pay. You were fairly compensated and then some. And then you see these people who are paid in the same way, and you're wondering, what is this all about? You think to yourself, I'd have done much better if I just waited to the last minute and then showed up at the 11th hour. So at this point, your outrage would be understandable. This is entirely unfair. Your employer starts behaving in this way, and if your employer started behaving in this way, you might want to find somewhere else to work. But remember, this is a parable about the realm of God. The vineyard represents God's community where things are different, but better, and things are life-giving and as they ought to be. And in this place, to be accepted into this place means to be accepted into God's love. Translate wages as God's love. This is not about money. This is about bestowing love and who is worthy of it. As I said earlier, the worker who came late to the vineyard did so because he'd been passed over again and again. You can imagine what the worker had to do in the meantime to survive, perhaps stealing to make ends meet, perhaps other things that were degrading, but a lifetime of hardship and separation from God. And then they are transformed when the owner of the vineyard says, you are accepted. Come into the vineyard. I choose you, warts and all. Welcome into the embrace of my love. So the worker goes into the vineyard and is blessed by the owner, as same as anyone else. There is enough love to go around. In fact, we read in other places in the scriptures that God's love is endless and that God is love. The point, no matter where you come from or how long it takes you to accept God's love of you, you are in the end embraced as if you had been there all along. This is God's love. This is a far cry from our modern systems of meritocracy, where we value others because primarily they contribute in one way or another because of their abilities, of their accomplishments. If someone can produce, well, then they are worthwhile. If they can produce, then they are worthwhile. And we are waiting and watching to see if they can pull it off. And if not, they are forgotten. If someone's efforts can be commodified, then they are somebody. They might even get a title, a fancy title. How about that? accolades, a big name. If they show up early and put in the work in climbing the social ladder, then they will eventually arrive. But in the realm of God, the last are blessed. And why? Because it's not about their ability to work their way to salvation, but rather about who they fundamentally are and always have been, a child of God. And oh, by the way, so are you. You are a child of God and worthy of love. You are also accepted. Apparently, this is what you deserve. Who would have thought? You might be sitting here watching this with a past that you are not proud of, thinking that you are not worthy or deserving of God's love. Perhaps you think that God will pass you over or has passed you over and never will accept you into the vineyard because of your flaws or the things you've done in this meritocracy. And the message of this parable is that God calls and in the end blesses even the ones who others think deserve to be passed over. The ones that you think deserve to be passed over, God loves and accepts and embraces. They are God's children, which means they're your kin, your sibling. But if you are one who has felt that you deserve to be passed over, if this describes you, know this. You are accepted as the laborers who are called at the last hour. You are accepted. God has not passed you by. So enter into God's love and grace. Apparently, that's no more than you deserve. Thanks be to God.